Good morning. Wow. It is great to be back in Riverdale. And David, thank you so much for that kind intro. It's so emotional. I almost cried before I got up here. You know, although it's been 16 years, it really does feel like it was just yesterday when I sat in your seats thinking about the next chapter of my life. You know, the campus looks a little bit bigger. You know, I also put on a few pounds. Congratulations to the class of 2013. And also congratulations to the parents and families of the graduates. All your hard work, love, support, and sacrifice is clearly evidenced in the bright eyes of the students who sit before me. Let me first begin by thanking the faculty, the deans, the board of trustees, and all the staff at Riverdale. You guys do some amazing stuff here. I want to give a special shout out to Chef Paul. Where's Chef Paul? You know, in high school, I've never overslept because I always want to get to school early to eat your sandwiches. It was that good. You know, so much of who I am today has been shaped by my time here. This school and my experiences here have forged the compass for my values. I've taken this compass with me, and it's helped me navigate through some tough challenges as well as devastating failures in my life. And today, I hope I can add a little to your compasses and share with you a couple of things that I wish someone had told me when I was sitting in your seats. You know, I thought long and hard about what valuable advice I can impart to Riverdale graduates who already have had such amazing lessons in life. I watched and studied commencement speeches on YouTube of Steve Jobs, of President Obama, Cory Booker, and even Conan O'Brien. You know, and out of the number of repeated lines and wishes, everyone tells you, follow your passion and don't settle for less. You know, that's great for those of you who already know what you're passionate about, but what if you don't? None of them will tell you how to find your passion or how to identify when you come across it. You know, the truth is, most people live their lives without ever finding their passion. Most people find complacency and choose to look no more. Others find passion but choose to put it aside for a number of reasons. And there's nothing wrong with either of those choices. But the fact that you're sitting here right now graduating from one of the most prestigious high schools in the entire country means that there are people who love you that will sacrifice so much so you can have the opportunity to live your life with passion. So today, I'm going to share with you how I was able to find my passion, and maybe my story will help you find yours. In 6th grade, my father left his extended family behind Flushing, Queens, to move him, my mother, and I, the three of us, to a foreign land called Riverdale. For those of you who are not familiar with Flushing, it's a massive growing immigrant community with over 60% of its population made up of Asian Americans. Flushing is the ultimate safe ground for Asian immigrants. I remember when I immigrated to this country at the age of 7 from South Korea, my grandmother, who didn't, she passed away, who didn't speak a word of English, took me to eat my first ever slice of pizza. She took me to the store on Roosevelt Avenue and ordered 2 slices and a Coke, all in Korean, to this Italian man. And he knew exactly what she wanted. I mean, the point of that story is that in Flushing, Asian Americans can live their whole lives without speaking a word of English. You know, my father left a very cushy corporate job in South Korea so that his only child, me, could dream big in America. You see, my father knew that to dream big, you have to see broadly. You have to experience a life beyond the one you were born into. Meet people beyond those familiar to you. My father felt my world was not big enough in South Korea, so he moved our family to New York City. And when he saw that my vision and experiences were not diverse enough in Flushing, he moved us to Riverdale. I was in 6th grade and I had no clue what he was doing to me. I was terrified of leaving my friends who looked like me, who ate the same food as me, who carried that Jansport book bag over one shoulder like me. But dreaming big meant I had to leave my comfort zone to see the world with a wider lens. It took me years after college even to fully understand the sacrifices my parents made for me. After my family moved to Riverdale, we soon discovered the Hill Schools and we took a tour of Riverdale Country School. Of course we were impressed by the curriculum, the faculty, the facilities, but above all, my father was impressed by the students themselves. My father saw how engaged, compassionate, and confident the students behaved on campus. And he really wanted me to be part of this community. So for the next 6 years, my parents spent every dollar that they earned running a small grocery store to pay for my tuition at Riverdale. When I arrived at the school in 7th grade, straight from Flushing, I was completely lost. I had no expectation of making any friends, but I did. My classmates welcomed me, and never before had I felt more included in any community, including the one that I came from. And this is my deepest memory of Riverdale. In 8th grade, I was part of this basketball team that we put together called the Four Horsemen, and we were undefeated. We played 20 pickup games. And one of those heated basketball games, one of my opposing classmates came up to me and yelled, "Why don't you pack your stuff and go back to your country?" I was shocked. I didn't know how to respond. A sense of alienation just washed over me. But before even I had a chance to say anything, every one of my classmates rallied around me. They defended me, and that player's face turned bright red. I didn't know it then, but that moment planted the seed that would one day grow into my passion for public service. It was this example where a community stood up for me that compels me to stand up for others, particularly for those who are alienated and targeted for no other reason than being different. For my classmates and staff and faculty here, I saw open minds, acceptance, and compassion. This was the compass I took from Riverdale. Had I not left my comfort zone, my passion to be an advocate for others through politics and public service may never have evolved. So my advice for finding your passion is simple. Step out of your comfort zone. If you do so, you will see broader and you will dream bigger. If you haven't yet found your passion, you're not likely going to find it in the same place you've been looking your entire life. And if you are lucky enough to have already found your passion, diverse experiences and a broader view and perspective will help your passion evolve. The same YouTube clips by President Obama and Cory Booker and Steve Jobs will also tell you, don't be afraid to fail. Well, I disagree with that. That fear of failure is the single most accurate indicator of whether you truly found your passion. Without that fear, you may mistake a fling or a hobby as your passion. Without that fear, I would not be 100% convinced that I found my passion as a public servant. After years opening up myself to all sorts of experiences, from Riverdale to Hamilton College, I returned to Flushing to see an emerging and dynamic community with endless possibilities. I have seen the possibilities of beautiful communities, neighborhoods, and school systems, and I wanted to transform the community that I grew up in. I wanted to be an advocate for the isolated and alienated immigrant groups to help direct resources to improve the quality of their lives and provide their children with the same opportunities that I had. Just like how my classmates in Riverdale stood up for me, I wanted to stand up for them. So in the summer of 2009, I launched my first campaign for a seat in the New York City Council to represent Flushing. I gotta tell you, it was an absolute disaster. After 2 months of campaigning, I couldn't secure an endorsement and was eventually forced to fold my campaign. My name didn't even make the ballot. I felt like a total loser. I didn't leave my room for a month, didn't shave, didn't pick up my phone calls. And despite barely not eating anything, I still managed to gain a few pounds. My esteem was lower than it had ever been in my entire life. I couldn't stop thinking about my failure. It haunted me. I kept reliving in my head every error that I had made. Thought about every little detail, what I should have done differently. I questioned if I made the right choice to run for public service. I questioned whether I even wanted to be a politician. I questioned my passion. I eventually got out of my job, I got out of my apartment, shaved, and found a job. But the fear of failure never left me. 3 months later, I still had nightmares. 6 months later, I was still upset with myself for the things that had gone wrong. And then a year later, I realized that I still love public service. You see, ironically, it was that fear of failure that continued to remind me of what I love most. Anything worth having is and will always be extremely frightening to lose. So if you find your passion, that fear of failing at it will not and should not ever go away. But don't let that fear paralyze and deter you. That's not what I'm trying to say here. Instead, let it motivate and drive you. I was so afraid of failing again that when I had another chance to run for public office, I was prepared. My fear drove me to work harder. It provoked me to think harder, campaign harder, and fight harder. When my opponents were still sleeping, I was up greeting my voters at subway stops and subway stations. When my opponents were taking a Sunday off, I was going door to door to meet my voters. I shook so many hands that my right palm broke out in a rash. I spoke to so many people that my tongue swelled up for a week. It somehow gave me this funny Texas accent, and I swear one of my constituents was visibly confused to see this Asian talk like that football coach from Friday Night Lights. But he voted for me, so it was worth it. I embraced my fear of failure. I used it to validate the conviction of my passion to push me further than I've ever gone before. Now elected, and as the first Korean and only Asian in state government, I had the privilege to pursue my passion with full steam. I'm able to advocate for a working class family that has historically not had a voice in city, state, and federal government. Today, I'm driven by a different fear. I'm afraid every day of failing my constituents. I'm afraid every day of not being able to deliver results or resources to the constituents whose hands who I shook and who I gave my word to that I was going to make the community better. Recently, an 87-year-old man walked into my office for help. He was almost completely deaf and had cataracts in both eyes. He came to my office, he had no family, and he needed help with housing. This 87-year-old man travels every day on a casino bus back and forth to collect those free vouchers, which he resells at a discounted price so he can raise some money to pay for his rent in an illegally converted apartment where he shares the apartment with 5 other seniors. The problem is that he can't provide a proof of residency and collect any benefits. This story involves many policy issues, and it's just one example of the cracks in our system. The fear of failing my constituents drive me to constantly think of new ways to fix these cracks. It is this fear now that keeps me up at night and keeps me motivated in search of solutions. I recently saw this Gatorade commercial with Dwayne Wade and Kevin Durant, which summarizes my message today in less than 1 minute. The commercial starts out with Kevin Durant dribbling around 3 players, and he makes that final cut, and he goes for that slam dunk, and all of a sudden you see Dwayne Wade coming out of nowhere for that full rejection, and you see Kevin Durant waking up from this nightmare, and the rest of the commercial is him his training, and of course drinking some Gatorade. And he's waking up early, just working out, lifting weights, and practicing his thumbs, all because he was so scared of losing to Dwayne Wade and getting rejected. The point of my story in this commercial is that when you're passionate about something, it is that fear of failing, in this case getting rejected, that keeps you up at night and makes you wake up earlier than anyone else. This was how it was for me. I use that fear of failure to fuel me every day while I advocate on behalf of my community. I just believe that if you're truly passionate about something, the thought of failing, losing, or getting rejected is bound to keep you up at night. My message today to the graduating class of 2013 is very simple. Get out of your comfort zones to find your passion. When you find it, ask yourself, am I absolutely terrified of failing at this? Let this fear of failure move you. Let this fear of failure move you. Thank you for your time, and congratulations again to the class of 2013.
Good morning. It's with great pleasure that I